This week, I'm sharing an Appalachian retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, or as I call it, Marilla and the Heddle Haint. It's a tale of a miller's daughter, a room full of straw, a greedy family who holds the deed to her father's mill, and a magical little man who offers a dangerous bargain. Here in Appalachia, you can still find folks who spin fleece into yarn, taking the rough and raw and turning it into something useful. While you listen to Marilla's bargain, you'll watch my mother at her spinning wheel, just the gentle whir of the flyer and the work of patient hands, turning raw wool into something as valuable and beautiful as gold. If you found your way here because the world is a little too loud, you're in the right place. There's no rush here, just a quiet corner to rest your eyes and your mind. So settle in, let the wheel turn, and the story unfold. Let's begin.
Rumpelstiltskin, Appalachian Edition, or Marilla and the Heddle Haint. In the deep curve of the blue-misted valley, two mills sat on opposite sides of the same water. Miller Abner's was a small timber-frame place, the wood smoothed by 3 generations of calloused hands. Downstream stood the Jones Mill, a sprawling fortress of white-painted siding and iron that grew with every passing season. For years now, Abner watched his orders drift downstream. He'd refused to let his spinners go, instead borrowing against his land and machinery. The day came when the debt grew bigger than the mill itself, and Old Man Jones and his son Silas rode up to Miller Abner's porch. "Abner," the elder Jones said, his voice grating like grit in a gearbox, "your debt's due. The interest has outrun the principal. If you can't pay, I've come for the deed to this holler." Abner sat in silence, hiding his panic and watching his daughter Marilla. She was inside by the hearth, her hands working wool with a grace that seemed to pull light from the shadows. Desperation is a fast-talking liar, and it took hold of Abner's tongue. "You might have a right to my deed," Abner said, his voice calm, despite the dread rising in his chest. "But you're throwing away the only thing that could make this valley truly wealthy. My Marilla, she's got a gift. She can take a pile of common oat straw and twist the very light of the room into it. She'll spin you a yarn so fine you'd swear it was pure gold." Marilla, quite aware of the predicament they all were in, heard her father's rash words and felt the world tilt. She watched the elder Jones and son exchange a heavy look. Old Man Jones turned to Marilla. "Girl, if you can prove your gift, we'll tear up your father's note. In fact, you can have a place in our family as Silas's bride. A girl like you deserves a share in a real business." Silas stepped out of the shadows, offering Marilla a quiet, kind smile that looked all the world like the way out of the storm. "We could do a world of good together, Marilla," he whispered. Marilla looked into Silas's soft eyes and reasoned if she could win the son, she could steer the old man. Miller Abner's face was the color of wood ash. He realized the stupid thing he had done. But before he could stop the unfolding drama, Marilla stepped past her father and proclaimed, "I'll do it." The Joneses swept Marilla down the ridge without even a bag. They locked her in an attic room with a mountain of straw and a giant spinning wheel, its spindle pointing at her like a silent finger. Before she could catch Silas's gaze for even a drop of kindness, the bolt slid home and she was alone. Now Marilla's only companions were the low rhythmic roar of the water wheel far below and the cold weight of her gamble lying in her chest. Then a dry, papery rustle, a shadow, stirred in the heights. Marilla didn't scream. She had been raised on tales of the wee folk. She reached into her apron, found a small apple she'd meant to eat with her supper, and set it on the frame of the wheel. "I reckon you know the mess I'm in, standing here with nothing but a lie," she whispered. A shadow detached itself from a crossbeam and dropped onto the floor with the lightness of a leaf. He was a spindly thing, wearing a coat woven from spider webs and soot. His face was a knot of ancient wrinkles, and his eyes were a wide pair of circles that reflected the moonlight like a pair of creek pebbles. He picked up the apple, sniffed it, and took a bite. "The Joneses only bring me demands, never sweet apples," the little man said with a low rattle. "Why should I help a girl who's come to marry into such a sour house?" "Because I'm not like them," Marilla said, her voice growing stronger as she looked the creature in his moonlit eyes. "I'm here to save my father and our neighbors." The wee man cackled, a sound like dry husks rubbing together. "A trade, then. I don't work for free, and I don't work for apples alone. What will you give me to turn this straw into glittering yarn?" Marilla reached into her pocket for her mother's silver thimble. It felt heavy in her palm, a piece of her heritage she was now offering in trade to keep her daddy's mill standing. The little man accepted her offer and took in Marilla, his pale eyes narrowing. "If I do the work, you're still just a prisoner. But if I teach you, well, the Jones don't own the magic. They only own the room it's in." And so together they started. The wee man kicked the wheel. The whir filled the room like a singing note. Under his knobby fingers, the dry straw lost its teeth and felt like warm water. He showed her how to feel and spin with the mountain's heartbeat, a pulse that matched the river below. By dawn, the straw was gone. In its place sat 20 skeins of yarn that shone with a honeyed light. The little man had vanished, and the thimble with him. When the bolt slid back, Old Man Jones pushed inside. He didn't look at Marilla. He went straight to the bobbins, his fingers trembling with a raw, naked hunger. Silas followed, his gaze lingering on the piles of gold before it ever found Marilla's face. "You look like you've wrestled the sun, Marilla," Silas murmured. He reached out to take her hand, but his thumb brushed her gold-dusted palm in wonder rather than finding her eyes to offer comfort. "2 more nights, and your daddy's debt is settled." That evening they led Marilla to a room with a pile of oat straw twice as large as the first. Once the bolt clicked home, Marilla didn't wait. She set down a honey biscuit she had saved back for the strange little man. "I'm ready, little teacher," she whispered. The papery rustle returned. The little man looked leaner tonight, his eyes hungrier, and he snatched the biscuit. "The hunger of this house is growing, Miller's daughter," he hissed. "They see the gold and they want the world. This mountain of straw is twice the weight of last night's work, and my bones are twice as weary. It will take more than an apple and a thimble to turn all this into gold." Marilla's hand went to her throat. She unclipped her grandmother's gold locket. "This is the last bit of home I have left," she said. The little man took it, his fingers tracing the metal. Then he stepped to the wheel. "Tonight the rhythm is faster. You felt the heartbeat of the mountain yesterday. Tonight you must feel the pull of the river. It's water that turns this mill, and it's that power that will twist the golden light into your spinning." It was a fever of motion. Marilla sat at the bench, her arms burning. Her feet pumped a relentless beat that matched the churning water wheel below. Under the little man's guidance, she learned to bridge the gap between straw and sun, and the result was a thread of deep, burnished gold that seemed to hum. "You're learning," the little man whispered, his form beginning to fade back into the shadows as the first birds began to stir. "You're starting to own the wheel, Miller's daughter, but tomorrow they will ask for the impossible." The second morning, the old man Jones counted the skeins with a raw greed. Silas watched Marilla, his gaze calculating. "One more night, the final test," he murmured, his hand remaining firmly on the doorframe as he blocked her path. "Then the debt is paid, and you are a Jones." When dusk arrived, they led Marilla to a room so vast the rafters were lost in the dark. Nor was it a mountain of straw this time. It was a sea, wall to wall, and deeper than a man is tall. Marilla sat at the wheel, her body leaden, waiting for her teacher. The little man dropped from the shadows, ragged and fraying. "I cannot spend this alone," he hissed, "and you have nothing left to pay me. If I am to turn this sea into golden yarn, you must give me a promise of what is yet to come." Marilla looked at the impossible task. What could I possibly promise? The little man cackled, a bitter, sharp sound. "I was the breath of the valley once, with a name that tasted of pine and rain, but the Joneses took my name and used it to bridle me. They harnessed my spirit to the gears of this mill. Now I am their engine, but I taught you how to spin the light, and now you are the one thing they can't control. You will be a Jones tomorrow. You will have a house, a name, and soon a firstborn child. If you can give me back my name in 1 year's time, the name they've locked in their ledgers and whispered to the foundations, then we both can go free. But if the year turns and I am still tied to this mill, I will take your firstborn to turn the wheels in my stead." Marilla felt a cold sweat prickle her neck. This wasn't just a trade, it was a race. "If I find your name, you're free, and their hold is broken?" "Free as the wind," the strange little man said. Marilla looked at the vast golden sea of straw and then at the desperation hidden in the creature's eyes. She reached out and placed her hand on the wheel beside his. "Then let's find the rhythm," she whispered, "one last time." They worked in a fevered, desperate silence. The sea of straw vanished into the wheel as the thump hiss of the treadle kept time with the rushing river outside. By the time the first cold light touched the high windows, the warehouse was no longer filled with straw. In its place stood rows of shimmering bobbins that looked like columns of captured lightning. The little teacher faded once more into the rafters with a final haunting whisper. 1 year, miller's daughter. Give me back my name, or your child will be mine. The wedding was at noon, a quiet and cold affair. Her father's debt was settled, and the war for her future began. Marilla played the part of the Jones bride with a quiet, practiced grace, but beneath her fine dresses she remained a creature of the mill. She walked the floorboards, not as a mistress, but as a student of its secrets. She sat with the weary spinners, her fingers moving in the old patterns. She didn't just offer kindness. She shared the skills her little teacher had taught her, lightening their work. In return, the workers gave her their loyalty and, in time, became her spies. "Listen for the names the Joneses speak to the wind," she whispered to them. "Listen for what they mutter when the gears jam." By night, Marilla scoured Silas's office ledgers, filling a notebook with every name she found in the ink-stained pages. But she feared these were only the names of men, and she was hunting the name of a spirit. In due time, a son was born, a beautiful boy with eyes as bright as the yarn his mother had spun. But not long after, that strange, wrinkled little man walked out of the nursery shadows. "The year is done, miller's daughter. It's time for you to give me my name or give me your child." Marilla hurried to step between the creature and the cradle, hoping to bargain for time. "It took 3 nights for you to teach me to spin gold," she said, her voice steady despite the sweat on her palms. "I ask for the same grace, 3 nights and 3 guesses for each sunset." The little man paused. A dry, rasping cackle came from his throat. "The apprentice asks for the master's mercy. Very well, 3 nights, but on the 3rd sunset, if I don't have my name, your child will be mine. And now, time for your first 3 guesses." Marilla fumbled for her notebook. Her eyes raced through the long columns of names she had harvested from the ledgers. But only 3 chances. "Is your name Albert?" she asked, her voice hitching. "Or maybe it's Luther. Could it be Reuben?" The little teacher threw back his head and laughed. "Those are names of men who die in soft beds. You bring me names of men, but I am made of mountain and shadow. 1 night gone, 6 guesses left." He vanished like smoke, leaving nothing but a memory behind him. The next morning, Marilla went straight to the mill floor and gathered her friends around her. "It's not any of the names I've collected," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I have 2 nights left before he takes my son. Do you hear any strange names cross the Joneses' lips?" A grease-stained boy leaned in. "We can't help you there, miss. But we've seen the shadow man. The girls call him Heddle Haint on account of how the looms move even when the treadles are still. Some folks call him Master Mender since the belts are new every morning, and us boys have taken to calling him Spindleshank because of those long, thin legs of his." Marilla, desperate but doubtful, wrote those names in her notebook and watched the clock tick toward the next inevitable visit of that strange little man. The sunset bled across the valley like a bruise. Just as the moonlight hit the nursery window, the wee man appeared. "I'm here for your 3 guesses, miller's daughter." Dread pooled in Marilla's gut. She had no secret name, only the scraps and whispers she'd gathered from the mill floor. She steadied her breathing, praying the creature might like the sound of himself in the workers' mouths. Maybe he'd let the child be. "The folks in this mill have seen your handiwork," Marilla said, offering the words like a tray of thin glass. "They've taken to naming you for it. Are you the Master Mender? Or maybe Spindleshanks?" She hesitated, then threw out the last of it. "Are you the Heddle Haint?" The little master's pale eyes flashed with anger. "They named me for the drudgery," his voice vibrating like a loose bolt. "I was not born to knot their broken threads and grease their rusted iron. Those are names for the iron collar the Joneses put on me, Miller girl. 2 nights gone, 3 guesses remain." With a loud clap, the little man was gone. By the 3rd day, Marilla was near collapse. She turned to the oldest woman in the mill. "The time is almost gone, Granny," her voice tight with a mother's panic. "I've checked every record of hires, every family tree. The name isn't there." "There has to be another ledger," Marilla sobbed. "Not the office books, the real book." The worn woman gripped Marilla's hand. "Mistress, I followed old man Jones into the wheel pit last night. He pulled out a small black-bound book and called a name, but I only caught the edges of it. It started with a fur and ended with a mournful keen. When he was done, he tucked the book into the masonry right behind the main bearing. He's hiding it where the water and the iron will guard it." Marilla's eyes widened. She remembered the little man's words, a name that tasted of pine and rain. She didn't wait. She ran down into the wheel pit, a roar of spray where the massive axle spun with a force that made her bones vibrate. She ignored the water soaking her silk dress as she reached into the damp hollow behind the shaft, a space that could crush her arm if she slipped. Her fingers clawed at the stone until they hit a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Out it came, and in it was the black diary. Her lantern light danced over the pages looking for the one thing that mattered. There, in the old man's handwriting, was scrawled the strangest of names, a curious conglomeration of syllables. Could this be it? She clutched the little book to her chest, desperate that it was. That night, when the strange little man appeared, his form was more solid than it had been in a year, as if he were already drawing strength from his pending freedom. "The time for games is over, miller's daughter," he hissed. "Give me the name, or give me your child." Marilla stood tall and looked the little man straight in his tired, moon-pale eyes. "I couldn't find the truth among the names of men, nor could I find it in the hearts of those who work alongside you. But in the stones of the mill, I believe they're the ones that hide it." The wee man's eyes flickered. "The stone tells no tales." "The stones remember everything," Marilla countered. "I remember what you told me on the second night of our spinning. You told me you were the breath of the valley, that your name tasted of pine and rain." The little man froze. "So let's end this game for both of us, little teacher. Is your name Thistledown Nary?" "No," the creature warily whispered. "Soft as a man's bed. 2 more. Is it Bur-Oak Peary?" "Harder, but still wrong. 1 guess left, Marilla. 1 guess before I claim my due." Marilla stepped forward, pulled out the little leather-bound book, and called out, "Little man, your name is Furtis Airy." The name hit the air like a thunderclap, and the strange wee man shrieked, not in pain, but in a terrible, wonderful cry of freedom. Then came the echoing scream of the mill. The main drive shaft snapped like a gunshot echoing across the ridge. The sound of twisting metal shrieked across the hills. The great water wheel shuddered and stopped. "Free," Furtis whispered in wonder. "You broke the machine." He gave Marilla one last look of grateful release, and then Furtis Airy vanished into a shadow of mist and pine scent. The Joneses' reputation shattered as fast as their main shaft. Their stores of gold yarn had turned back into worthless dry oat straw. They were left with nothing but a mountain of waste and the skeleton of ruined machinery. Old Man Jones spent his remaining days wandering the wreckage, muttering to stones that no longer answered, while Silas fled the valley to escape the debt of lies his father had built on the back of a mountain sprite. Marilla left it all behind and didn't look back. She returned to her family mill with her son and the friends who had helped her. Prosperity spread throughout the valley, evenly this time, built with the hands of the workers and the steady honesty of the old mill. On the clearest of mornings, Marilla would walk the mill path to watch the breeze travel the valley. As if just for her, a tiny whisper of wind would whip across the valley floor and climb the hillside in a silver-green wave. Sometimes the breeze would dip down to join her, smelling of pine and rain. Then Marilla would go back to her work, the steady, rhythmic spin of her own wheel echoing the heartbeat of a free woman of the mountain.